à tous, merci d'être là. Hello everyone, thank you so much for being here for this very special conversation really with Hans Ulrich Obrist and Sou Fujimoto, who designed, for a great pleasure, our first Japanese platform at ASIANOW. Thank you really to, first of all, the ones who make that happen with the new team, Sou Fujimoto and Marie-France team and the Sou Fujimoto architect. Without Christian Terraciou ID from Pitch Promotion and his support, that wouldn't have been possible. Thank you so much, Christian, and Pitch Promotion, les équipes. It has been a great support for us. I would like also to take the opportunity to thank Terada, our great Japanese partner, Terada Art Assist and Terada Warehouse for their fantastic partnership on this Japanese platform. This Japanese platform has been a challenge, you know. We had to make all the galleries understand that it won't be about a white cube here. I will let that to Emmanuel de Montgazon, a fantastic curator, along with Isabelle Olivier, who have been working on this for months now. And I have no words to tell you how happy, grateful, excited, and thrilled I am. Thank you.
I won't be that long, but I wanted to underline one thing that is for me very important. I hope you will go all to the Japanese platform after the talk, is that the way Sou designed this platform is also for this young generation of gallery and artists, a new way probably to reconsider how they can show their work in art fair. So the architecture itself re-question fundamentally this relation between the art and the commercial side, and the fact that we are not in a closed space but the in-out, and finally we can a little bit see the other, which is also very Japanese, and I think the way of Sou Fujimoto is creating his work for a long time, and between nature and architecture, which will be the subject, is also something that we can feel in this platform through the art and the relationship, really the relationship between all the people, all the inhabitants of your architecture. So I let you discuss and start from this point, and again, many thanks for the great input you gave to the artist and the gallery. So thanks to your project.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. I'm Hans Ulrich Obrist. I'm the artistic director of the Serpentine Galleries in London, where of course we worked with Sou very intensely on the Serpentine Pavilion, which I hope you can all visit, because it is now installed for 3 years on the very central square of Tirana in Albania, where we were invited by the mayor of Tirana, as well as also the Prime Minister, Edi Rama. Edi Rama is an artist who runs Albania today, so we can say Albania is an artist-run country, and great things happen, you know, when a country is run by an artist. One could wish that happens elsewhere maybe too. So one of the first things was that actually Eddie brought Sou's Serpentine Pavilion in collaboration with Luma Foundation and Maya Hoffman to Tirana, and it's still there for more than a year. So we hope you can all go there and experience this pavilion. I want to congratulate the organizers on this amazing project here, and to work with Sou on such an experimental display. I think it's very important that we always think about architects not only doing buildings, but architects actually working on display features. And Richard Hamilton always said, you know, its display features, which are so important for the history of exhibitions. So we talk today about Sou's building, about Sou's display features. But before that, we have a very, very special beginning of this conversation, because Philippe Pareno is here with us today. A big applause. And Philippe will now begin today's conversation by asking Sou the first question.
Thanks. So I would say I can't would always start a conversation, no? What is your unrealized project?
Wow. Unrealized project.
Yeah.
Wow, I have
Many
of unrealized projects, and every time, of course, the starting point was like blurring, realizing, unrealizing, because thinking and starting from something big beyond that. But at the same time, all the kind of unrealized project could be the starting point or seeds for the future projects. So it has like some essence, and could be changing in the future, and could be reinterpreted by me or by client or by other situations. It will be changing. So I'm thinking, of course, finally the project is stopped. It's very sad, but at the same time, I could feel, even though it is stopped, but it will be the possibilities and potentials for the future. So I feel such a continuity and unexpected, how to say, reinterpretations, an accidental jump from the one unbuilt project to the other ideas. So I'm very positive for that. Yeah.
It's a beautiful answer and connects very much to a famous sentence of something Philippe always says, la chaîne est belle. It's a chain reaction in a way. Now what is also very special about beginning this conversation with a question from Philippe to Sou is, of course, that the two of you collaborate on a project in Japan, and as this is here all about the art-architecture nexus, because we're in the context of an art fair, talking about architecture, we should never forget that, there was a time where art and architecture were together. Vasari, talked about the lives of the artists and the lives of the architects. So I thought it's interesting, because we haven't really spoken about that project much so far. It's a very new project, to hear a little bit about what the two of you are going to do together.
Okay, so, well, this is really recently started. So we don't have any images, we don't have any sketches yet, but the situation is the site is in Japan, the city named Okayama, and where the one, like a collector and also the head of the company, is trying to activate the whole city by bringing art and architecture and design throughout the whole city. And our project is like the one hotel room or one space people stay, designed by both of us. It's not like I make a building and then Philip make art, but it's more like an intense collaboration. And creating a place. Because the Philip's work is already like integrating or including like the space itself. And of course, I myself is making not only just the building itself, but more like the space experiences. And it is quite like I believe experimental things, because it's not just I make a box and then put the art pieces, but more like from the very starting point, intense discussion, collaborations to create like something. Yeah, that's the situation now.
And the very first collaboration, even before this building, is actually that you've, before we start, done a post-it together. We're going to post it on my Instagram at the end of the talk, because I post every day as part of a movement to protest against the disciplines of handwriting and doodling on Instagram. A handwritten sentence or a doodle by an artist or an architect. And of course, the surrealists had this wonderful idea of the exquisite corpse. So we have an exquisite corpse here of Sou and Philip, of integrate, forest, chaos, order, light, darkness, nature, primitive, architecture, future. And we'll have it here. So after the talk, we put it here. So after the talk, whoever wants can make a photo and you can put it on all your Instagram. It becomes a collective thing. Anyway, so beginnings, we began with a question about the unrealized project. I want to go to the very beginnings and ask you how you came to architecture, or how architecture came to you. I once spoke to our friend Sejima, and she told me when she was, 6, 7 years old, she saw a magazine in her parents' house, some architecture design magazine, and there was a metabolist house of Kikutake, the famous house of Kikutake, the house in which he lived. And she, of course, didn't know anything about architecture, but for her, being a 6, 7-year-old child, that made her so, fascinated. She became so obsessed by this image that was really for her the seed. She says that's when she became an architect. When did you become an architect?
Oh wow, yeah, from very, from my childhood days, I just loved to make things. And the first encounter with the architecture was, I think when I was 12 years old, something. I saw the photos of the Antonio Gaudi building. It's really so different from what I understood as an architecture, or as a building. But that was not the time I decided to be an architect. I was just shocked. And then I realized that designing architecture is also part of such a creative activities. And then after that, in my high school days, I was more interested in physics, really influenced by the Einstein and his theories, or how to understand the world in a simple way, but in a really elegant way, and so on. So yeah, at that time I was just like to be the physicist. And then when I get into university, I realized that the physics needs a lot of smartness. And I didn't have. I realized that I couldn't understand anything at the first class in the university. So that is why I gave up physics. And then I don't know what to do. Then I just happened to came into the architecture school. And at that time, I only knew Antonio Gaudi. So that was I didn't know Le Corbusier, didn't know Kenzo Tange, any architects, only Antonio Gaudi. So that was the starting point. But that was nice because then the first day of the school, they showed me the images of the Le Corbusier, Miss Van der Rohe. Was really shocking and surprising, how to say, excited about it. And then suddenly I really get into the architecture.
And I was wondering how you connected to, the previous generations of Japanese architecture and avant-garde. Because some years ago, when Kolas and I made a book on Japanese metabolism, so we went to visit all the Japanese metabolist architects. Many of them said they have passed away. They were very old, Kitsutake, of course, and also I think Maki is still alive. He's still working. He's in his 90s now. Of course, Kurokawa passed away. He ran for mayor of Tokyo, and we went to interview him at the end of his life. He suddenly decided that he wanted to be architect mayor. Leads us back actually to Edi Rama, right? And so we interviewed all these metabolist architects, and we realized that, of course, it all somehow connected to Tange, because they were the children of Tange. Tange was the first Japanese architect who really went global, and who at some point then was invited to the United States. And when he was away, he gave these young architects his office, to kind of experiment. And they organized there this first big conference, and so in a way he gave them the condition to experiment without really teaching them, but just the freedom. And so Rem, said, I always thought the book is finished. We went to Japan 15 times, and Rem always said, no, we need to do more interviews, something is missing. And so at some point he said, what is really missing is Tange, because we can't understand metabolism without Tange. Tange passed away. So then Rem had this genius idea that we could interview the two widows of Tange. And somehow that was then the way the book, was accomplished. And I was very curious what that generation meant to you. There's of course also Arata Isozaki. He was never really a member of metabolism, but he was very much, associated. It's actually very wonderful that Emmanuel made the introduction, one of the two introductions, because we met on my very first trip to Japan in the 90s with Emmanuel, and I think the first architect I met there was Isozaki, and it's of course Isozaki who introduced, you know, Japanese architecture really to Paris, because he did this legendary exhibition about this in-between space called Mars. So to cut a long story short, I would just be curious how this amazing, you know, avant-garde, somewhere from Tange to metabolism to Isozaki, then also another figure, Shinohara, who was never really part of any movement, you know, how did these people influence you?
Wow, yeah, it's, when I got an education of architecture, it was almost like a last moment of the postmodernism. And then in Japan, it was like there was such a craziness of the shapes and something. Of course, yeah, Ito-san was part of that, even Ando-san was part of that, Tadawano was part of that. But on the other hand, the education in my university started from really modernism, like Corbusier, the Mies. So I more preferred such a modernism. And then I felt, wow, postmodern, such a craziness, it's so crazy. So then I more, how to say, felt like a sympathy to the Kento Tange because of those kind of modernism and because of the feelings against the postmodern feelings. So that was the starting point to realize that the Kento Tange is really great. And so I got a really huge influences as like a modernist of Kento Tange. And on the other hand, Isozaki-san was like a kind of the opinion leading person around that time in Japan, of course every time. And he tried to not only buy architectural pieces, but he tried to show the new way of thinking of architecture. Or for example, the art museum, the next generation art museum should be something like this, more site-specific or something beyond site-specific or something like that. So he's always like talking about kind of bringing a new typology of building should be there somewhere. So you should find it, you should go for that. So then he, I don't know, push us, younger generation, to be brave enough to challenge to what we have, to reinterpret the whole histories. So all of those kind of the influences I got. And then around that time, I'm not so interested in the metabolist. I don't know why. Maybe because of the, how to say, trend in Japan or something. But then after the school, after 10 years or something, I started to try, like go beyond the modernism by myself, and then try to do such a fragmentations and the relationships as a network or something. And then I realized, when I did a lecture abroad, one audience asked me, yeah, your work is really like, it looks like a metabolist work. And do you feel some influences? And I realized, wow, I almost, yeah, of course I saw some of the pieces, but I didn't get into that. But still, unconsciously, I got an influences by the metabolist to make how to go beyond such a modernism by fragmentations, by interrelationships and group formed by marquis. All of those kind of things unconsciously influenced me. And so it's like a small revival, personal revival of the metabolism. And that is the time I saw the works by the metabolists, the Kurokawa, and the Otani, and the Kikage, and Maki. And then I understand what it is. So those kind of, how to say, sometimes hidden, but then afterwards it's coming out, coming back, and so on. And Shinohara,
Yeah, I want to ask you about Shinohara, because Philip and I have been very obsessed by Shinohara's houses, and he doesn't fit into any boxes, but it's an incredibly complex experience. Was he an inspiration to you? Because I used to meet him always towards the end of his life and do interviews with him, and he's very difficult to grasp these houses. They're so complex. And he's also, like you, he comes from science originally.
Mathematics, yeah. So yeah, I also had a chance to meet with him at his last moment. And of course, before meeting, everybody says he's quite like difficult to talk and something. But once we met, he was quite like relaxing and jokings and the funny guy, so it's kind of opposite from what he made and what he was like described. And then I really love him because of his personality. And then I visited some of his works, and I felt, of course, his works is really like clean minimalism, and then like an integration of the Japanese tradition to the modernism and something. But I also felt like he's really like he's based on the trust on the people who lives there. So he make a space, but it's not like just a pure space. He let people live there. So it was kind of a combination of the life and the space. Beautiful integration of the life and the space was there, I felt. And then his pureness has the meanings for me in the context of that. And I was really impressed by that.
And what about Ma? Because I wanted to ask you about Ma because it's so fascinating that Isozaki introduced this concept, through a group show of Japanese architecture in Paris, and this really went far beyond the architecture world, because it's there that Roland Barthes, discovered Japan, and the whole literature Roland Barthes wrote was triggered. There was a kind of whole new interest in France for Japanese culture prompted by this exhibition. What is exactly Ma? What does it mean for you? Can you explain to us what is Ma in 2018?
Well, the Ma is always like quite, of course, as you know, difficult to explain. Yeah, of course, yeah. For these 10 years, I'm always talking about the title of my lecture is same, Between Nature and Architecture. And normally, if you translate between something and something, this is kind of the really direct translation of Ma. But at the same time, the Ma itself is like is something, not only just in between. And it is spatial, but at the same time, it's not only the spatial things. It's more like a conceptual sense, physical, but something. And of course, really, from a long time ago, Japanese culture has been having something. And for me, personally, my interpretation is architecturally. It is like creating some kind of an integration between two opposite situations. For example, as I described, for example, when you think about the chaos, or quite like active life on one hand, and then order on the other hand, and then we have a super wide ranges between order and chaos, and then to think about such a wide ranges, to accept such a diversity of variations between them, could be quite like creating such a place of diversities, place of which allow people to behave with freedom or something like that. So architecturally for me, and of course inside and outside, brightness, darkness, and of course nature, architecture, always for city and or public, private also. So we always have such kind of, the concept split it from one side to the other side. But I like to integrate it. And then I feel there's an ambiguity between these two could have some kind of feelings of alarm for me. And but still, it's a nice concept because you can always reinterpret it by your own way.
And we talked about your unrealized projects, we talked about your beginnings, your influences, your inspiration. It's kind of time to now move to your build work, because you've actually, realized an astonishing amount of projects in the last couple of years. So where did it begin? Can you tell us about your first build project?
Wow, the first build project is quite like, it's before my father. It's just a small extension of my father's hospital. Yeah. So that was like the first experience. And at that time I was 25 years old or something. So that was the actual real build project. But at the same time, conceptually, course, always like the concept is go beyond at that time, the building project. So then after 10 years, I try to struggle to fit concept to the building. And yeah, finally around 2000, mid-2000, so 2005, 2006, or a bit later, I felt that my thinking and the build one are now, how to say, matching together. For example, the project House M, it's like a box and box house.
Yeah, can you tell us, do we have images of that?
Yeah, it's, for example, is
that was one of the first projects of yours I saw when Yuko Hasegawa introduced us to
yeah. Yes. I think, oh yeah, this is the house N, and this is really like talking about something between inside and outside. But the idea is to create the house as like a continuously to really private area in the middle. Then gradually it's getting more like open and finally melting into the city. So the concept is more like those kind of traditional drawings. But then translation from this concept to the real building should have some gap. And of course, not only as big drawings, but also into the details and the material and so on. So it was like, the moment. Now I felt this is like the actual realization of my thinking.
And can you tell us about the process? You know, if we see an extraordinary built structure like here, it's kind of interesting, I think, for everybody here present to understand how you do this, because drawing is a very important part. You once told me it's an endless process of trial and error. That was actually when Julia Peyton-Johnson and I visited you for the Serpentine Pavilion for the first time. We saw these drawings and you said, you know, it's an endless process of trial and error. And you like to use very simple means in a way in that process. How is the process? How do you work on such a building?
Well, I have several ways. One is, of course, sketches. Then another one is use the text, like a listing up just what I thought. And then, of course, at the very beginning, no context, just like the list of the words, but then gradually it has more like getting more sentences or like a logic or some jams and something. So the text by myself is also quite important. And also the sketch model is another way. Because using your hand, so it's something beyond your thinking, it's more like your hand just do something, and then you see it, and you start to re-understand what it is. So it's like, to find out beyond your thinking. And maybe the last one is a discussion with my team. It's also like try to be beyond what you yourself thinking, because the discussion, question and answers and something, you always have unexpected ideas, and then even from myself, try to answer to their questions. From myself, the unexpected, the way of explanation is coming out. So those kind of how to say, there's sketches, handwriting sketches, and text, and discussion, and sketch models. All of those kind of the process is like going back from one to the others. But of course, recently it's getting, for example, the private houses, something, it's like the whole condition is quite like limited. So it's rather easy to understand to start. But now recently we are doing more like an urban project or complex situations. The composition with such a context or histories, climate background, all of those kind of complexity, questioning to that kind of situations and then getting answer from them. So communication with such a context, wider context, is also quite an important part of the process. And then, again, of course, through the communications, yeah, we can get the new understanding of the situations, but at the same time, if the situation is so complex, try to integrate, try to find something which could integrate such complexities, like the theory of Einstein. So find out such a, like a straight line or clear visions of some things is also kind of a quite important.
Wonderful. Can we go back to the images of the Serpentine Pavilion? Because it sort of has to do also with the drawings, because you often talk about this attempt to create an interaction or a blurring even, we can call it a blurring, between the interior and the exterior in your architecture. And that is of course something which also happens already in your sketches, because your sketches are often blurry, hazy, they're kind of random shapes. Can you tell us a bit about that sort of interior, exterior, and then this sort of hazy, blurry quality? I mean, it was amazing, and is amazing with the Serpentine Pavilion, now also in Tirana. It's also this macro thing, because when you walked in the park, all of a sudden you saw a city appear, and then you realize, no, it's actually smaller, it's a pavilion. So you kind of zoom from a macroscopic into a microscopic view. It also seemed to defy gravity, because it seemed almost like to hover or float above, kinds of gardens. And there was clearly something very hazy about it. So yeah, interior, exterior, hazy, blurry, random.
Well, yeah, it is like, it has been like one of my strongest interests from the starting point of my, I would say, architecture education until now, because anyway, architecture is really strong, and walls and made by concrete or stones or something. So, but at the same time, on the other hand, our life itself is more like a come in and out from buildings and gardens or a city and so on. So always like architecture is made blocking or too strong, I felt, from the very, very beginning. And then of course, the Japanese tradition has sometimes like such a softness of the boundaries made by the papers or sliding doors. And also, like one of the first sensations for Mies van der Rohe building was like some of his pavilion has, it is just a walls. So the space is enclosed, but not completely enclosed. So it's a flow of the space or flow of the air is always going around that pavilion. And I was really shocked because before that I only knew the buildings like a box. And then those kind of, the experiences made me think about trying to challenge such a strongness of the buildings, and then try to find out how we can make a better communication inside and outside, or blurring situations. And then, of course, after that, when I thought about such a gradational feelings, then I felt, if we have blurring boundaries or blurring blurriness, we can have more choices, or we can have more like varieties of experiences, I felt. And then, in a very different way, I tried to realize it. And of course, the Serpentine Pavilion was the, most strongest examples where I could challenge in various different blurriness, in a sense, not only between inside and outside, but from the furniture scales to the architecture scales. It's like the transitions of the scales was really amazing, and transparencies, opaqueness, and even from outside, it is far away. It's more like looks like a white cloud. But if you get closer, it's more like the transparencies and opaqueness is like more, variously floating around. And then different activities happen. It was like a really amazing moment to see how those kind of blurring stepping field inspire people to behave in a very different way, which is also like created by such a blurriness positively, I think. So it was a really kind of and it will be the main topics, one of the main topics, I think, for me to think about such a blurriness.
And it's important also the connection to, to nature, because of course we have here the connection to a cloud. It was clearly a cloud pavilion, interesting in the age of computer clouds. And of course in Paris, we have here the history of the great Hubert Damisch, whom I want to remember here today, who passed away some months ago, one of the world's greatest art historians of the 20th century, who wrote this memorable book called Théorie de Nuages, Theory of Cloud. But it's not only clouds, you have mountains, you have forests, your early very famous wooden house, so there's also a connection to forests. And of course, Red Kohlhaas said recently, the future is the countryside. He makes a big project on the countryside. You actually come from the countryside. You were born in the Hokkaido area before moving to Tokyo, and of course there are these natural forests. And when you moved to Tokyo, you once said that in Icon magazine, you moved to Tokyo, you suddenly felt that Tokyo made you somehow think of these forests of your childhood. Can you tell us a little bit about the connection to the countryside, to nature, to clouds, to mountains, to forests?
Well, actually, of course, I was, in my childhood, I was just playing around in the nature. It's not a big nature, it's just like a small nature, but it was really nice. But of course, at that time, I didn't realize it's like it's forest or it's nature, it's just playing around. Then when I came to Tokyo, I didn't expect anything, but when I was there, I felt rather comfortable. And at the beginning, I didn't know why, because it's so different situation, so different environment. But then, of course, after I learned architecture, scales, and something, spaces, and I realized, you can see the contrast of the space of those photos. But even in Tokyo, you feel you are surrounded by many floating small pieces. Everything is artificial, but the small-scale floating pieces are surrounding you softly. And then it's almost like the same in the forest. In the forest, everything is natural, but small things, the middle-sized things are floating around you to create such a human scales. And both of the places, like open field. It's not like enclosed. It's always like you can choose your own way. So those kind of are open, but at the same time, softly surrounded and protected feelings are kind of a quite fundamental feelings of the cozy, comfortable space as an architecture or as an environment. So that is the moment I realized, wow, even in such a super artificial, ugly situations, we can feel comfortable because the structure behind the appearance is the same, for example. And then, after that, I thought about, if so different things could be the same, then we can think about many different similarities or connections between nature things and artificial things. And then it is nice challenges how to create such architectural spaces, but we can say it's like a forest, or not only the forest. I was more grown up in the forest, but then cloud is also like really ambiguous, strange shapes, and couldn't, describe what it is. It's really far away from the architecture, but then if it is far away, it's nice challenges to connect to each other. And then, of course, we can think about every natural situations, mountains, cave, or something, could be always like putting together to architecture to see what is the hidden similarity behind it. What is, kind of a nice way to think about it.
Now many things have happened since the Serpentine Pavilion opened a little bit more than 5 years ago. And one of the things, of course, which we want to particularly hear more about today in Paris is your extraordinary experience and your extraordinary ongoing adventure in France, because you have an office here now, you have many projects in France. Can you tell us a little bit about them? I think it's almost 10 projects now.
Yeah. It's surprising because it's just started 5 years ago. After Serpentine, we got a chance to join to the one competition in Montpellier, in the south of France. And then we won. And that was a time I was just get an invitation from the local architects in Paris and the developer from the Montpellier. And then this is it. It's like because they have a really nice weather. So yeah, we like to respect their lifestyle and climate because this is their identity. So then finally we just put in huge balconies, 8-meter depth and 6-meter wide and something, and 200 balconies sticking out. In Montpellier, yeah. And then that was the starting point. And yeah, I had a nice time to collaborate with the two French architects. They're very nice persons. And then we are continuing the collaboration for the other projects. But so yeah, in a sense, I was lucky because yeah, the first project is something like this. Now it is almost finishing, putting balconies and sticking out. And yeah, it's almost like floating fields. And yeah, if you're on the balconies, you feel it's a bit strange because positively. Yeah, normally in the apartment house you have the privacy, but then on the balconies you see the neighbors in a three-dimensionally, and you can have a conversation with them. So it's like an open field for life, and then of course the building itself is quite like I believe beautiful, but more beautiful things is those balconies will be filled with life. Freedom of the life, and then parcels, and then chairs and furniture, everything is coming out. And all of the 50-meter high buildings like a tower of the life itself. And that was the starting point. And then also at the same time, I was really excited to make a conversation with such a special context, like a Mediterranean climate. Then we learned the lifestyle and their traditions and the beauty of the weather. And those kind of new conditions, new experiences was really like full of inspirations for me. So it's not like not only coming from our side, but also like between the context and the outside. And this is the other project we won last year in Nice, together with the Christian pitch promotion. There, of course, Nice is also like really Mediterranean. So again, we try to make such a field for life. Then this kind of curvy shape is inspired by the coastline of the Nice because it's really beautiful. So try to reintegrate or reinterpret the local situations. But still, it's quite like huge balconies with many openings, as you can see. So the light sunlight is coming through. It is like exterior spaces, but it's almost like the architecture spaces stuck up. This is also gold. And yeah, this is exterior spaces diagrams. So more like interactive relationships upstairs and downstairs. And then this is the project near Paris. Also quite like a complex situations because the southern part is more like
Is realized? Or?
It's just started. We won the competition beginning this year. The context is quite like a complex because the southern part is more like a small private houses, and then the northern part is a 50-meter office blocks. So yeah, I'm now enjoying how we make communications and then how to create or how to reveal the identities of the situations and then give the shapes for that. It is like because every time the situation is really like chaotic in a sense and full of the contradictions, but architecture sometimes could give the one, maybe it should be the one buildings. And this one building could be the integration of such a contradictions in one place. And then this is the Paris project. It's like the floating forest in Paris. This is also like a nice composition with the Paris, because the Paris is has a height limitation, 30 meters or something.
So that's a beautiful linking language here, that you find the forest of your childhood in the cities. In a way.
Yeah, and the floating forest right above the Paris is like could be the strong landmark, but at the same time really harmonizes with the height limitation of Paris. And of course, yeah, on the forest here we have small houses, so like a nice contrast between the apartment house and the Paris. They're small houses. So in here, like many different types of the contrast and harmony, contradictions, and integrations happen. So on those kind of urban larger scale projects, they are different from the private house project, but still like reinventing the whole context and reinterpret the whole complex situation, history, climate, urban context, and of course the functions. And then make a beautiful integrations.
Any other projects in France? I guess there are more, right?
Yeah, some more.
Can you tell us?
Well, yeah, we are doing they call Polytechnique. It's the university learning center, which is just right out in Paris, in Saclay, and which is creating more like a inner kind of relationships between each different places of the students' activities. And yeah, we recently won the competition in Switzerland, the first one, in St. Gallen, city of St. Gallen.
Where I studied.
Really, yeah. Which is also like a St. Gallen University Learning Center, and which is made by the Grid. So it's rather related.
The university has a long history of commissioning artists. They have Giacometti, Georges Braque, recently they had commissioned Hans Richter. It has an incredible art program on the campus.
Yeah, this is like the Grid frames, which is because the whole space is like full of the different activities of the students, like pin-up, workshop, discussion, sleeping, chatting, eating. And then, yeah, of course, I hope full of the activities, but still like to make some kind of balances of order and chaos. And then this grid, from outside, it is more like the stepping shapes to harmonize with the whole surroundings. And then for the inside, it's more like making the subtle order which allow more active, chaotic situations and interconnections in different activities.
It's of course particularly fascinating that this will happen, you know, in St. Gallen, because it's a university where the late Professor Binswanger taught for several decades, you know, in his groundbreaking Institute of Economy and Ecology, how we can introduce ecological thinking into the models of our current, you know, 20th, 21st century economy. And that seems to be wonderfully connected to what you do with architecture in a way. I've got two last questions. One is, I think it would be interesting that you tell us a little bit about the collaboration with the Paris Asian Art Fair and how this collaboration evolved. And I think that's, we are here, so it would be great to hear about that.
Oh yeah, it was like, yeah, of course, it's like a collaboration with the art in ASIANOW, and then the sponsor, Pitch Promotion, Christian, and ourselves. And then, of course, it was like a big challenge because, of course, it could be just the white cube, but at the same time, it's I felt some kind of expectations to go beyond that, and then I realized, of course, it should represent Japan and France, so nice like configurations, mixture of the Japanness in a sense, and several different galleries are together, so not too much divided, but more like communications, interactions. And then finally, yeah, as we did, we proposed to make the walls like half non-walls and walls, because the walls is very important for their art and exhibition spaces. And then we tried to make the walls like a half walls and half anti-wall or non-walls. Then it could have like the transparencies in a sense, in between interactions between one space to the other places, or from here to there, and and there and there. And also I was expecting to, if you do that, then sometimes you see the backside of the wall. It's like normally it's hidden, but then the backside of the wall is appearing. And it is like another unexpected built spaces or found spaces, which I was hoping some of the artists or galleries could use as like a kind of a uniqueness of the spaces. And then today I was really happy to see that they put the art pieces on the like backside corner of the spaces, or using the columns as putting some art pieces. So try to create a space which could have like a nice interactions between the curators, artists, and the architectural spaces.
And that brings us back, full circle to the beginning when we talked about this important aspect of, architecture being able to invent display features for the way we see art. My very last question, I see several young architects here in the audience, and Rainer Maria Rilke wrote a little book which is an advice to a young poet. So I thought it would be kind of lovely if we could end this conversation by you telling us what in 2018 would be here in Paris your advice to a young emerging architect.
Wow. Okay, so I wrote, I believe it has, okay. So 3 things. Be questioning, continuing re-questioning. It's also for me too, because I have been re-questioning everything in a sense. What is the wall, what is the exhibition spaces, what is the house, and what is everything. So every time when we started the project to design the learning center, then what is learning, what is a place for learning, and so on. So be questioning, re-questioning. It's quite like exciting, and it's really fun. And be optimistic. It's quite important. Yeah, because you are making the future. And the last one is be honest. This is the most important thing. Be honest to everything, to yourself, to the client, to the budget, and to the people who use that, and be honest to architecture and history. So this trees.
That could not be a more wonderful conclusion. Thank you so much, Stu. Thank you all very much. And we do have to post it here, so for those of you who want to make a photograph and post it on Instagram, the moment is now.
Thank you very much.